Hello, and welcome to Barbatus Catholic Podcast, the show where three Mexican dads talk about faith, life, and culture. We are your hosts,
Gustavo,
Ivan,
and Walter. And today we are going to talk about the future of the church that sits in the cry room. But first, a word from our sponsor. Our sponsor for this episode is Don Taco Mobile Taco Stand. If you're looking for the best tacos in the valley, look no further. Let Don Taco cater your next event, whether it's a birthday party, quinceañera, or a wedding. They will bring to you the tastiest tacos made with the freshest of ingredients. Book them today. Go to dontacocatering.com to learn more. You can also follow them on Instagram at dontacomts. And now, to the show. So I have Solanus story because I'm almost to the last chapter of Thank God Ahead of Time, The Life and Spirituality of Blessed Solanus Casey by Michael H. Crosby. I think we put this in pretty much every episode, but Solanus was celebrating his Jubilee year as a priest. So he was a priest at least 50 years. And Brother Pius Cotter, one of the friars in Detroit, because he went back to St. Bonaventure from Huntington to celebrate his Jubilee Mass. And he asked why he urged people to thank God in advance for the grace you're about to receive. And Solanus said, it's like putting God on the spot, because Jesus promised, ask and you will receive. So it says, Solanus in his simple, direct faith took Jesus at his word. Because of this promise, he reasoned people could always put God on the spot on the assumption that God would be faithful to what Jesus promised.
That's bold.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah. Well, thank you for this thing that I just asked you.
It's like the ball is on your court, Jesus.
I'm stealing that, by the way.
Right?
I am definitely stealing that.
Put God on the spot.
Thank you for giving me the patience that I need right now, Lord Jesus. So yeah, I only have chapter 8, the last year, because his weeping eczema is getting really bad right now, where to the point where, like, you see his pictures, he always has like this Irish smile. That's how it gets described. But in around like 1956, it says that the novices started noticing how he would wince from the pain of his weeping eczema on his legs. There was like raw meat. And I was like, that is something that I fear in a way, because I feel like there is a very direct relationship between physical suffering and holiness. You have Teresa of Lisieux, who had this horrible, debilitating disease towards the end of her life.
Saint Bernadette, same thing.
Saint Bernadette.
Padre Pio with the stigmata. So
yes. Who was it? I think it was Saint Teresa of Avila that said, like, if this is how you treat your friends, no wonder you have so few of them.
I love that quote.
So I'm like, okay, it's like I want to be a saint, but like, please don't send me calamity. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
I bruise like a peach, so
I bruise like a peach.
So I don't.
Es que estoy güerito. So, anyways, did you finish the letters of Tolkien?
Yeah. So we've talked about, I'm a big Tolkien fan. I just read the letters of Tolkien, and man, it's so cool. One cool thing that I found out, I don't know if you guys know this, but did you guys know that Tolkien hates Disney?
Somebody told me that. Might have been Carolina.
He hates Disney.
Carolina told me about that.
Which is insane.
And C.S. Lewis too, right? Both of them.
I didn't know about C.S. Lewis, but I knew that Tolkien.
Yeah.
I mean, I just found out through this book.
Yeah, so the story that Caro told me was that both C.S. Lewis and Tolkien went to see Snow White, and they came out like bashing it.
I know, they're like, yeah. So they were thinking of after the Hobbit came out, they wanted to make it into a movie, and all these companies are reaching out to Tolkien and all that. And I remember he he wrote a letter to one of his publishers saying, let's see, what happens. And then he didn't. I don't think he wanted to. He was like very specific of how he wanted the movie to be done, and he said on one of the letters, he said, just say no to anything from Disney because I have heartfelt loathing.
Oh, there you go.
Tell
me how you really feel.
Tell me how you really feel, Tolkien.
Diles algo, no te quedes con las ganas.
No. Heartfelt loathing. It doesn't get any worse than that. So if you're a Disney fan out there, I'm sorry, but Tolkien does not like Disney. I like Disney, but I love Tolkien.
Well, Disney is responsible for many calamity and changing stories at will of classic stories.
People are going to think we hate Disney on this podcast.
I mean, I have a Disney Plus account.
Same.
Yeah.
You know what's
Disney
funny?
Plus.
I mean,
Peter Pan, when you play Peter Pan in Disney Plus, it says that like it has a tobacco depiction and then a depiction of
the Native Americans.
Yeah, Native Americans. I was like,
thanks, Disney.
Didn't think about that. But I guess in this day and age, that is pretty offensive. And those were the things that like I never stopped to talk about. But this is the world we're living in now. Anyways, what Secret Fire? No,
Secret Fire. Yeah, I'm nearly done with that. So good. You're gonna love that one, Ivan.
I can't wait.
Oh no! Wait!
Tolkien fan.
Talk about the one that you just found.
Oh, so we were like at St. Vincent de Paul this weekend, and Carolina found Colby and the Commandant, which is I'm really looking forward to getting into that one because it's like a dual biography.
So is it
book.
the commandant of the camp where Colby was?
I would assume. I like I said, I haven't read it, but just from the cover, it's like this is gonna be good. This is gonna be. It sounds like an epic
movie.
Yeah. Then I went to Amazon because I sent you guys the link, and it's like $95 on Amazon.
I was gonna ask you how much did you buy it for?
For like
the Paul
75 cents or something like that.
Are you kidding?
Yeah. That's those. Gato's like has a magnet for those things, a radar.
She can sense the books.
Superpower.
Yeah, that is a superpower right there. So shout out to my wife, who's amazing.
I'm telling you, if you want to find an obscure book that is out of print, Gato is your girl.
She's your plug.
Your plug, yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to diving into that one. I have a story of Thomas More, and It Began with Benedict. Those are the three books that I think I'm hoping to get through.
I asked you about It Began with Benedict.
Yeah.
The one about Thomas More, is it a Men for All Seasons, like the play?
No.
Oh, okay. So it's a book about him.
Uh-huh.
Because the only one that I could find about Thomas More is Men for All Seasons, but it's just a play based on his life. I have it in my bookshelf. Yeah. Yeah. I buy a lot of books that I don't read. I should probably. Did I tell you I want to do one book per month? Maybe.
That's my goal too this year.
Barbatus Book Club.
Yeah.
It's going to become a thing. This is going to come out all the way in April. So maybe by then, hopefully we have a few other books that you have heard us talk about.
Yeah, if we're still talking about the Secret Fire and the and the Solanus book by then, please call us out on it.
Yeah, seriously. Anyways, our topic today is our episode is titled "The Cry Room," and I got the idea for this episode basically out of despair and frustration because But why are you laughing?
That's the best source of inspiration, though.
Well, I can laugh about now.
It's so accurate.
Yeah, and it's gonna be like a catharsis, um, for talking about it. Yeah. And maybe you too can help me sort out a few things, especially Gustavo because he has older girls. Um, so taking your kids to mass. So right now, um, Deanna and I have gone through going to mass with one kid to going to mass with two kids to going to mass with um, three kids under 5. And it's one of the most challenging things and one of the biggest sources of frustration for us, at least. And you know I don't know if this is when you go to mass and you always have this sensation that everybody is watching you, that everybody is like,
because they are.
because but that's
And
the
they
thing.
judge you too.
That's
No, I'm
true.
kidding.
Well, some people
They judge you on how bad a parent you are.
Yeah, I feel like that's a thing. That's from the um from the want of approval of others because of the behavior of my kids at mass. Deliver me, O Jesus. That should be the
Exactly.
litany of humility for parents.
Exactly.
So, the end, and I feel like most times it's an exercise on humility and managing expectations. Basically because um, after Lucia became a toddler and Emilio and Oliver cannot sit still they're like almost almost 4 and 5, so they're going to distract each other quite often. And if you bring books, you're gonna give a book for each other, but they obviously want the opposite book,
Mhm.
and there's gonna be a fight about it. Or if you give your rosary to one, the other one is gonna want it because it's Daddy's rosary. All these things. So we've gone from like sitting closer to the altar so they see what's happening to sitting closer to the door so the walk of shame is shorter to the narthex, to going to the cry room where the kids are isolated. If they start losing their mind, it's okay because it's only you and the other families with the other kids that are also losing their minds. To the point where we just started splitting masses, and just Diana takes Oliver, or Emilio and I take the other kid.
Like Solanus' parents.
Like Solanus,
Mhm.
but they had 8.
16,
They had 16,
dude.
and the
8
thing is, like,
each.
they split it because they cannot all fit in the buggy.
The buggy.
But I feel bad, and Catholic guilt is real. But I think that right now this is where we're at, and it's like very real. And also it's like you want to take your kids to mass because there's no other way that your kids are going to know how to behave at mass if they are not going to mass. So they need to get the flying hours.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt about that. And you know this is kind of like a recurring theme in the podcast. Like, I think the shared experience that we have, all three of us, is that we were poorly catechized as kids, and I don't remember going to mass with my family. We went like for maybe a couple years together as a family, and because we went to a misa para niños, which I don't know if they had that in Hermosillo or in Jerez, but it's like a very charismatic mass, and the songs are aimed for children, and
Yeah,
it's
we had that.
catered
Yeah.
catered for children. But in the US that's not a thing, and it's not like I want that, because I want my children to be accustomed to good liturgy. um but that requires that I have all those feelings of frustration. So in this I'm pretty much gonna lean on Gustavo because he has older girls to tell us that it gets better. And any listeners out there, you can tell us, what are your strategies for, having your kids behave a little bit better? But before, I mean, it's not going to tell us right now because we are recording this episode. But Ivan, what has been your experience taking the girls?
Man, you know what? When we just had Lily, it was a piece of cake. Obviously she's a baby, she's in the car seat. She would either be napping or, my wife breastfeeds her, and then she goes back to sleep. And then she started getting a little bit older, and when she wasn't in the car seat, I would hold her on my lap, and she was fine. But then I think, I don't know. I mean, this is kind of just the way that I see it. But when the pandemic hit and we couldn't go to mass, we were just like pent up in the apartment for the whole time. And then when we finally came back to mass, it's like she had no idea what it was. And it's like, oh, fancy church. What is this? I'm going to run over here. I'm going to go over here. So it became so hard to be inside of the main church because she just wouldn't stay still. And yeah, like you have those moments where she's screaming her head off, and like you feel that at that moment, like just everyone just turns and their gaze is on you, like the eye of Sauron when he's like focusing on the ring when you put it on. It's like I put on the ring and it's like everyone's looking at me. I'm like, I gotta get out of here because it's crazy, man. It's scary.
Well, granted, like, not to say Father Klein, Father Keneally at St. Joan of Arc, they made a great job saying we want the kids.
Absolutely.
Bring the kids to mass.
Absolutely.
This is our own failing as parents and feeling this. Well, I'm speaking more for myself. I don't know if you feel like you're failing, but sometimes it can feel like that.
Well, like Bishop Olmsted said in his exhortation, if the church ain't crying, it's dying.
It's
true.
Yeah,
you need new blood in there. And it's, I mean, you nailed it, Walter. I mean, there's no other way other than taking your kids to mass. I mean, making it a part of life. And eventually kids grow out of being kids. And it does get better.
When?
Yeah, like how old were the girls? Like when they started to go to RE?
A little younger than that. I want to say like 4 and 6, maybe. Okay. But because Ana Lucia was already 6 and Frida was like, okay, that's how you behave in mass. But, dude, Ana Lucia, like, she beat me when she was like your kid's age. That was around the time where I was like not very consistent with my faith and I wasn't really growing. I was like a Sunday Catholic, right? And she would be like that, just running down the aisles and laughing and yelling, and she would be like full of energy, and she would always just manage to get out of the reach of my fingers. So I would like tiraba el gatazo and I would barely like reach like the back of her hoodie, and she would sprint down the aisle, and she would go all the way to the altar if I didn't sprint out like behind her. She would literally go up on the altar, and now you're like, okay, everybody's seeing you now.
Yeah.
And we literally got asked to leave one day.
No,
that's how bad it was.
Way.
Yes, it was
by another parishioner.
In Nogales?
Yes, in Nogales. It was I think it was a baptism of one of our nieces or nephews or whatever, and she was just like wailing. Acá, she was just wailing.
Rosita dijo.
I wish it would have been Rosita, respectfully saying, "Sir, can you please?" No, it was the priest from the pulpit. It was like he stopped what he was saying to ask us to please take the child outside.
Wow.
That was like a low point. So I just don't want people to think that we got everything figured out here. My kids are older now, and God bless them. They're really good kids. But Ana Lucia gave me a run for my money when I was when she was little. To the point that I was just like, I would just stay outside. I would get to church, and the first peep out of her, I would be like, let's go. And I would listen to mass outside and not really listen to it because I would just be running around preventing her from mayhem outside in the church.
Yeah.
So it got to a point where I was like, why am I going to church? Because I'm just frustrated.
That is exactly the same feeling that we are trying to fight. It's like, why are we even doing this?
But it's that consistency, I think, that and mass here also helped, because when we first moved to Phoenix, we were going to a couple of different churches. We used to live like closer to downtown, and we were going to St. Francis Xavier, like the noon mass, and it was like really, really loud and noisy and like a ton of people, and it felt like you were in like a plaza, not so much at mass. So it was like a lot of commotion. So she kind of like started feeding off of that,
This noisy here, I can be noisy
exactly
too. Yeah.
And then initially we were like in Chandler for a couple of months. I think it was St. Anne's. They have a huge cry room, and we were like, well, we're just gonna stay in the cry room because we know how she is. She was like maybe 3 at the time, and Frida was like barely 1. And it was like the cry room couldn't keep these kids quiet. It was like so big, and it was so many kids, and it was just like a day at the park. And she was just like, okay, all these kids are yelling. This is what we do here. So again, it was like that. Is like, I don't want her to associate mass with playtime and loud time and screaming time and time where you don't listen to dad or mom.
You can do that at home.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, we had like rough patches, right? Obviously, kids are going to be kids, but it does get easier when they start growing out of it. I mean, when I'm talking about 5 or 6 for Ana Lucia, so 4 for Frida. So Frida was always a lot calmer, and she was always taking after her sister. And we did that. We started going all the way to the front, and we would try to explain the things that were happening on the altar, look at the crucifix, look at the choir, try to get them engaged in what was happening. And yeah, eventually just everything fell into place. You get to a point where you're like able to listen to mass, and as soon as they can follow along, we bought them their own missals. So now they're like engaged in the readings. We were very adamant about giving them rosaries and sacramentals that they can keep for themselves and bring to mass, so they can feel more part of mass. We would take them to the rosary before mass so they can just like get the whole experience. And yeah, I mean, it's trial and error. We did all those things, and now we're back to the cry room. Not the cry room. I don't think we've gone to the cry room yet.
But this weekend was the first time. For those who don't know, Gustavo and Carolina are amazing, and they're fostering 3 kids just recently. So
recently 3. So we started with 2.
You went to mass with 5 children.
We went to mass with 5 children this past Sunday. Yes, and
give this man a cigar.
And you're still alive right now.
And I mean, it was a little challenging, but only the younger one, the 1-year-old, he's a boy, and he's a little inquieto at times. So there has been a time where I have to go out to the narthex with him or whatever. But we also have to kind of like strategically time it, where, like you mentioned, they have to be fed, they have to be like properly napped, and so on and so forth, to try to minimize any outburst of rage that comes out of these dragons, right?
Yeah.
So because that's what they do. They just become mini dragons. And I mean, I would not be surprised if he starts spitting out fire one of these days, because they're
pretty awesome.
That'd be pretty sweet. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie.
Yes, Mom.
There will be dragons.
But no, I think we really lucked out. The other two little girls are a little older. They're like 3. They're 3 and 5. So they just take out from what they see with my kids. They're like, okay, we sit, then we stand, and we're quiet.
Mm.
But the baby's just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
You know,
Doesn't click for
I've
him.
been here for about 10 minutes already.
Why are we
due for
still
another
here?
scenery. So yeah, I mean, it's finding ways of keeping them engaged and try to keep them quiet, because I am mindful of that. As soon as if by the third time my child is being a distraction to everybody else, I just walk and go out for a little bit.
I think the moment we realized that we could not be in the main church was Lily was just throwing a fit. And we already had Pia. Pia was maybe 2-3 months. And man, Lily threw a fit. And I was like trying to, I picked her up to take her outside. And it was at Spanish Mass too. I remember this perfectly. I picked her up, took her out. And then when I picked her up and I genuflected, she was like, "No pegues, papa. No pegues." And I was like, "Oh no. They're going to think that I beat my child."
I was going to say the same thing. Emilio does the same thing. Don't hit me. And I'm like,
man.
I don't beat
I don't
my
hate
children.
you.
So I'm
okay?
like walking to the narthex and everyone's staring at me. And I'm like, man, they're going to call Child Protective Services on us because they probably think that I hit my daughter.
Yeah.
And then we finally started going to the cry room, and she's just energetic, you know, she's just super curious. And
Yeah.
And then like now she's kind of starts, you know, like if we say something, she'll repeat it back. And I remember one time we've run into the Cantus, to Walter's family.
Yeah, we see each other quite a bit in the
several
cry room.
times in the cry room. I remember one time. Oh my gosh.
You're going to tell the story? All right.
I'm not going to say the word, but
This is going to get good, guys.
I mean, I don't know what she was doing, and she is not getting into the habit of saying the F word. And, you know, we just tell, you know, my wife and I, we always say, like, man, we just hope she doesn't say that Mass. Lo and behold, middle of Mass, like Walter and his family are sitting behind us. And then Lily, she doesn't have a quiet voice. She's pretty loud. She says the F word, and I turn around, and Dee is just dying.
She
was
couldn't
laughing
handle it.
so hard, and I was just like, Lord, just take me now.
I didn't catch it. I didn't know what had happened because I was, you know, struggling with Emilio.
So we like try to find ways to entertain her now. Where like, okay, here's this book. Book's not working. Give me a snack. I need another snack. Here. She like buckles the car seat where Pia sits, or like whatever, like stare into Emilio's eyes. I don't care. Something that will keep her there without.
Mm-hmm. You know what crazy? I like about Lily? That she mean mugs everyone that is not you and Nayeli.
And then she does like somebody that she doesn't know. She like mean mugs him, and then she like points at me and Nayeli. She goes, "Papa," like saying like, "That's my dad."
But I'm like, I have seen you, girl. Like we're friends. But she kept mean mugging me. I keep mean mugging her back.
Do you remember cuando la asustaste?
Oh yeah.
Wait, you scared Lily?
Oh, yeah.
Well, what time? I think I've scared her a couple of times.
It was at Steve's house.
Oh yeah, what did I do? I'm blanking out.
Why are you scaring little children?
I don't know what it is. I don't know think if she myself
dropped as a toy or something, but you like went to pick it
up. She was playing with like a train, and I thought it was my 1-year-old.
Oh, that's right.
So,
that's right.
In order to prevent my kid from breaking something at somebody else's house, it's instinct, right? You sense a tiny person, and you're like, they're grabbing something they're not. That's my kid. So I went like this without even looking, and it was Lily. I didn't grab her. I didn't touch her. I touched the train. I was like, don't touch. I was like, don't play with this right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Lily. It wasn't my kid.
Y lo miró con un sentimiento de
she was just like,
how dare you tell me not to touch the train?
How dare you do that, sir?
Oh
But now
Yeah,
they're
I
cool.
feel so bad.
Now you guys are cool. She calls you Theo.
Yeah, now she calls me Tio.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Why should she call me Theo?
Because you didn't help move, son.
I know.
That's true. I see how it is. Anyways,
go.
coming back to the topic, you notice how now I say anyways instead of anywho, since you
That's
called
good.
out that I say anywho a lot in the podcast.
We're making anywho t-shirts.
Anywho t-shirts for Walter. What was it for you? Right?
Right? With a question mark after right?
And then bro.
And then bro for you. Yeah.
I think yours needs to be that's beautiful.
That's beautiful.
That's beautiful.
If you would like t-shirts, Barbatus Catholic Podcast t-shirts, hit us up. We can make that happen. Okay, so I just had like 3 more points that I have in my notes that I think we should discuss. Number 1, if you see young families at church, please be nice and encourage them. Like you are hearing like firsthand stories about us and how we have been struggling with taking our kids to mass, and as Bishop Thomas Olmsted said, if the church
Is
isn't
not crying.
it's dying. So we want those children to grow up in the faith, and it's ultimately a positive thing. But it's going to take time for these children. And then what thing gives me like holy jealousy is you see these families with like 6-7 children, and they're all well behaved. You're like, what
families? Yeah.
How did like write a book or something?
It's like, how did you do that?
Start a podcast. I don't know.
And they're like dressed in suits and like perfectly calm and like
Yeah.
holding their hands. I'm like,
Yes.
what? Tell me your ways.
Well, Caro is one of 10 children, and she tells me that that's the way they were, that they weren't rowdy at mass. I'm like, how did your mom and dad
more
do
children?
it?
It's the key.
Well, I don't know. If that's the key. But yeah, I mean, that's what she tells me, that they were never, and I don't remember me being like rowdy as a kid at mass. I don't know. I don't know if
You
kids
just
are just.
knew. You knew, but you knew. Sabías que te iba a ir mal en la casa. You knew that there was something going on.
Maybe.
But 1B, I think it would be to sit close, or well, right now that's kind of not an option. But before, I think Oliver used to behave way better when he would sit in the same pew as the girls.
Oh yeah.
So sit with someone that that you are friends with, that you have the confidence to pass on the babies, so they can help when they become rowdy.
Yeah, because sometimes the kids are so used to you, right?
Yeah.
That you're like, if they have an interaction with somebody else at mass, maybe they are more prone to emulate what they're doing. Maybe, I don't know.
Or be in their best behavior.
Because they want to be like on the right with
Yeah.
whoever's carrying them or caring for them in that moment. Yeah, that also works.
And number 2, please remember that Mass is communal. It is not your personal time of prayer. And this is not a put down, but it's just the fact that when you're going to Holy Mass, that's when the body of the church becomes one in the Eucharist. So there will be things that will interrupt your prayer if you're trying to approach it from this is my personal time of prayer. It is not your personal time of prayer.
Mhm.
It's a communal prayer. It's the most perfect way.
If you want your
Go to adoration.
Yeah.
Sign up for perpetual adoration if there is that in your church. Go to visit the tabernacle if the church is open.
So we had an experience like that. Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's fine.
But we had an experience like that at a church, which I won't name. But it's again when we first moved up to Phoenix. We were trying out different churches. I mentioned like St. Francis Xavier, and then we moved north. So we moved out of that place and we moved north to the house that we live in now. And then we tried a couple of churches around here, finally landing on St. John. But we went to this one where one of Carolina's sisters was visiting from out of town, and they had at the time, I think he was around 4, and he was like a rowdy boy. So, like all kids are, I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing. Kids should be kids.
Yeah.
Let's be very clear about that. Especially boys. Boys are going to be a lot more energetic than girls. So we sat down, and when we got there, it was like maybe 10 minutes before mass started. And we sat down, and like 2 pews in front of us, there was like this older couple. And as soon as we sat down, they started kind of like turning their head a little bit. And they started turning their head a little bit because my nephew was being a little rowdy, was being a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then like 3 minutes before mass started, he was like being even more rowdy. And this couple just flat out stood up, gave us the stink eye, and moved like 6 pews down and sat down exactly at the same elevation as they were before. So that it's not like we're gonna go to the bathroom or what. No, they made it a case to see we're standing up because you guys are interfering with our prayer. And that might have been, right? I mean, I'm not excusing, right? But I would have been a little bit more tactile about it. Coming to your point of saying it's a communal prayer, and be respectful and be mindful, and give these parents like a break,
Yeah.
Don't make them feel worse than they already do.
I was like, we don't care. We're trying.
Exactly. I would have been like, okay, if I'm not gonna be able to listen to mass here, I'll go to the bathroom, and then I'll just go find some other place, make it a little.
Disimúlale.
Yeah, ándale, exactamente. They made it a point to get up in front. They gave us the stink eye, and then they moved like 5 pews ahead of us.
We have that happen once, where there was an older couple sitting at the very end of the same pew that we always sit at because consistency, when we were sitting inside of the church. And they saw us arrive, and we sat down, and they just went away. And I was like, but they were. Did we say something?
But I showered today.
I know. It's Sunday. Anyways, it's not lack of want. We want our children to be in their best behavior, but sometimes it doesn't happen. It's not in the stars. And I guess number 3, and then we can go to final thoughts. The silver lining here for those listening that are in the same boat as we are is that we kind of already touched on it. That this is a stage that won't last forever. But I'm pretty sure the new challenges are going to arise. As the kids become older and bringing kids to church. But maybe once they are older, they're going to participate better in the mass. It's just a matter of, as parents, praying for patience and do what works for your family. If you need to sit up front, if you need to sit towards the back, if you need to go to the cry room, please don't let that define you. I think there is like the temptation to think that your kids are like the bar that measures you, like how good of a parent you are. And I can see that because they could be a reflection of what we are, but God didn't call us to be perfect. Well, He called us to be perfect because He is perfect, but um, he didn't call us to be successful. He called us to be faithful. I guess that's the way that I can put it. And all of those little sufferings, we can just offer them up as little mud cakes to the Lord, and like, hey, we're here. We showed up. We want to have our kids be part of worshiping and being part of the community. But this is kind of like contradicting to what I said now that we split masses with the kids. But final thoughts?
The other thing that we were able to do because of COVID, they obviously capacity was down to, I don't know, maybe 50% when they first opened up again. But they had a 6:30 mass in the morning on Sundays, which was no choir, and it was like a shorter mass. It was like a weekday mass almost. So that worked out because the baby was getting us up at that time anyway. So
just went straight to
mass. So we were like up at 5, and by 6:15, everybody was in the church, and he would tolerate that mass a little bit better because he was like recently fed breakfast. So just have a bottle, and it would get him through the first 20 minutes, and then it was all downhill from there. So it went quick. So find maybe, and it wasn't a full mass. It wasn't like packed with people. So there was a little bit more wiggle room to sit farther away from people so you wouldn't bother them so much, maybe.
Yeah.
Very echoey, though. Very empty church equals echoey church. But that also helped us. I think that got us through kind of like the summer. When the kids first came to us, that's what we started doing. So again, find ways of doing it, whether it's kind of splitting masses or finding another mass that it's not so full. Maybe go to like vigil mass on Saturday instead of the Sunday mass where it's really packed. And try out different schedules that work out for the kid too. Because you don't want the kid to be your children to be unhappy or suffering if they're like hungry at noon mass, and that they're like starving by the time they get out at 1 or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe don't go to the mass, try something else out. Just be flexible and with that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, as parents, we try our best to instill the faith in our kids. And obviously one of the best ways of doing that, maybe the best way, is taking them to mass. Praying with them and teaching them the faith. That's a huge thing. But taking them to mass, like that's such a big part. And I mean, it can be difficult, but I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't no, let's leave Lily with my parents and let's just you and me go to mass. Like, no, I want to take my daughters to mass. And I don't think I've ever had it where, somebody like an older couple or whatever has, given us a stink eye. My wife is very feisty. So
they know better.
She would not be nice about it. And I feel like I would be the same way. Like, I feel like I would get pretty upset if somebody did that. So, I mean, we try our best. But, just don't be a Karen. Don't be a Karen. And, we're trying our best as parents. We just want them to understand the mass and participate. They might be crying and screaming, but they're praising the Lord in their own way.
Yep.
Yeah. For some reason, it always happens around the time of the prayer of consecration, at least for my kids, because they know that the person there was a soul sister that told us that the reason why kids cry the most at the moment of consecration is because they're united to the sacrifice of Jesus. So there you have it. It's a little consolation. And I think we will leave it at that because that sounds like the smartest thing that I'm going to say in this episode. So thank you for listening to this episode of Barbatus Catholic Podcast, the show where 3 Mexican dads talk about faith, life, and culture. If you like the show, please consider subscribing to the podcast, sharing it on social media, leaving a rate and review on Apple Podcasts, and recommending it to your friends and family. And if you didn't like it, well, just keep it to yourself and let others make their own mistakes. You can follow us on Instagram at Barbatus Catholic Podcast. Send us an email at hello@barbatuscatholicpodcast.com. On the web, we are at www.barbatuscatholicpodcast.com, where you'll find the show notes for this episode and more. And take the little ones to church. Blessed Solanus Casey,
pray for us.
Until the next time.